Alright, well, you guys know the introduction already. Let's go ahead and get started. So, I asked you guys to look at a scene from Shakespeare's play The Tempest, and for the sake of simplicity, I can assume that none of you guys have seen, heard, or even wanted to have anything to do with this. So we're going to be taking it from the ground up. Now, we're not going to go crazy and do a lot of cartwheels and strange and extra things that we don't need to. We're going to do four things. We look at context about where the scene is, and then what is Prospero actually saying in this. You know, not diving too deep, just on the surface level, what's actually going on in this scene. And then thirdly, we'll dive down a little bit, see if there's some additional meanings and other things, symbolism works, if there's any of that, all that fun jazz going on. And then fourth, I thought it would be beneficial for us to actually see the scene performed. Now, I put the clip up, it'll be the same clip as I put up on the announcement. So if you've already seen it, then you gotta watch it again. But the reason why I incorporated that directly into this lecture is because this is a play. It was meant to be seen. Its ideal format is not just words on a page. It's meant to be performed up on a stage in front of an audience. And the clip is from the Globe Theater, and it's taken with very traditional costume, very traditional take and interpretation of the lines. It's as close as you can get to seeing how it was supposed to be performed 400 years ago. So giving us that extra bit of understanding for how this is supposed to work, because it's Shakespeare and it can be kind of difficult to figure out what's going on sometimes. And seeing it on stage definitely helps. When someone's actually acting it, that gives a lot more context and a lot more clues as to what it means. But enough of that. So let's talk about the context really quick. So this will be pretty short. It's just for things that are going on at the time. So what is the... Whoops, actually, I just realized this is upside down. Haha. Alright. No wonder that looked really funny to me. Alright. But for the... For the context... Excuse me. The context. Just what's going on in this scene. So, leading up to this, you have Ferdinand and a couple other characters are watching a play that's being put on by Prospero. So it's a play within a play. Now, what that play is necessarily about doesn't really matter, because at this point, this is when it gets interrupted. Prospero suddenly recalls in like 2 or 3 lines above the ones that I gave you guys. Prospero mentions, there's a character named Caliban who, for simplicity's sake, is out to... Actually, he's out to kill Prospero. And Prospero was aware of this plot by Caliban to come and kill him. He knew what time Caliban was supposed to come by and give him the axe. That is, I don't know what I'm trying to do. Why am I trying to doodle right now? I'm trying to give him the axe. There you go. He's trying to axe Prospero. And Prospero remembers that right in the middle of the play and is like, come on, we gotta stop. We can't do anything anymore. I got some important that I need to do. Let me just go do that. So that's basically what is the context of the scene, is right on the cusp of these lines, the play is stopped, and Prospero's like, someone's about to try to kill me. So that's what's going on right before this. So the first few lines, and I should have somewhere on this screen at this time some sort of diagram or illustration of something to show you what line I'm on. Because that's going to be really, really helpful, rather than writing the whole thing out here and wasting a lot of space and forcing you guys to read not only Shakespeare, but in my terrible handwriting, which is cruel and unusual punishment at the best of times. I'm just going to be referring to wherever I happen to have put that line that we're talking about on screen in post. It's here somewhere. You guys will see it. It will be clear, I promise. But the first few lines. So, you do look, my son, in a moved sort, as if you were dismayed. Be cheerful, sir. So in that line, he's just talking to Ferdinand, and yeah, he's just saying like, "Oh, don't worry about the sudden, somewhat paranoid interruption of the play. Everything's fine. Everything's all right. Be cheerful, sir. Everything is okay." So let's go ahead and mark that down. So this is actually said, right? So for the first 2 lines, for lines 1, that's a really weird one, but anyway, lines 1 and 2. He's just talking at Prospero. Telling Fur, I'm not going to write out Ferdinand all the way. Telling Fur it's alright. Everything's fine. We don't need to worry about anything. Why would you say worried? You look worried. You shouldn't be worried. That's what's going on. Alright, and to save space, let's go ahead and turn over to another page. And for the next 3 lines, so this is lines 3, 4, and 5. Read, our revels now are ended. These are actors, and then parentheses, as I have told you, we're all spirits, and have melted into air, into thin air. So what's going on there? So for one thing, for the first line, some things that we need to address is what the heck is a revel. If you don't know what that term means, it essentially means, you know, it's a party, shindig. I don't know if you people use that term anymore. A festive gathering. We're not going to spend too much time on that. But you guys get the general idea. It's something fun that's going on, something that everyone's enjoying. This is the play that he's talking about. So this is in reference to the play within a play. That's what he's talking about. So when he says, our revels now are ended, he's just saying, you know, that play we were doing, we're not doing that anymore, we're done. These are actors, as I foretold you, we're all spirits. In the play, there's magic and witches and other things. The spirits that he mentions in line 4 are actually exactly that. That's not even poetic license or something else. He's literally talking about spirits and other fanciful creatures in that, because those are the actors that were in the play, literally. So the other thing is for the third part, when he's saying they have melted into air, into thin air. All the spirits are gone now. So depending on the interpretation of the line, we won't spend too much time on that, but he may actually be referring to the spirits have vanished in some way, or they simply exit stage left. So when it says melted into air, just means they ain't around anymore. They've been dismissed. They are no longer in the scene. Alright, so for lines 6, 7, 8, and 9 that read, and like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit shall dissolve. So what's he saying there? So when he says the baseless fabric of this vision, long and short of it, he's still talking about the play. He's still going on about the play that he mentioned beforehand. He was in charge of the play. He really liked it. So that's what he's talking about. He's saying this baseless fabric of this vision, it's gone. And the baseless fabric part, so the baseless fabric of this vision, the baseless fabric here is just saying, like, you know that thing that we were doing, that we weren't actually doing, that we were pretending? Yeah, that was a play. That play thing that we were doing. So baseless fabric just means it was being pretended. Then next you have the cloud-capped towers and the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, and the great globe itself. So for all of those things, they're actually exactly what they are. So depending on your production for how they have staged the play before the scene, they may not actually have cloud-capped towers and gorgeous palaces and solemn temples. But he's saying all that splendor is what he's getting at. Those cloud-capped towers, gorgeous palaces, and solemn temples are a list of things that are spectacular, that were full of wonder. All that wonderful stuff that you saw, all of it's gonna disappear. So that's for 7 and 8 and 9. Yea, all which it inherit shall dissolve. Everything is gonna disappear. Everything is gonna be gone. That play is no more. It's not there anymore. Don't worry about it. All right, and then we have lines 10, 11, 12, and 13. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. Sir, I am vexed. And that leads on to another thing. Alright, so what's he getting at with here? So, that insubstantial pageant. So if you don't know what a pageant is, pageant. So he's still talking about the play. He just won't shut up about the play. And the insubstantial and faded part that surround this are just saying, like, hey, and that thing we were doing, it's totally not real. It's just a play. Totally make-believe. So just more of the same. Now, in line number 11, when he says, leave not a rack behind. What's a rack? It's just a really old term for a thing. Stuff. just generic, vague insert object here sort of thing, leaving nothing behind. So the entire play has been cleaned up, departed. There's no more props. There's no more stage pieces. There's no more prop furniture. There's nothing. Everything's been cleaned up. All the racks are gone, so to speak. And next part, we are such stuff. So going into the, I guess that's an arrow. And then it'll also go into line 11. We are such stuff as dreams are made on. It's kind of hard to say exactly what that is without diving down a little bit, but he's essentially talking about, everything that we were just doing is very fanciful. So that play bit we were talking about, the play, and in being so whimsical, we were, the players that were making it so. Now, we are such stuff as dreams are made on. We brought the play to life. That's terrible, and I'm sorry if you can't read it, but that's supposed to say we brought the play to life. That's what he's getting at when he says we are such stuff as dreams are made on. And for the end of that, and our little life is rounded with a sleep, is just saying that, once we wake up from this, everything goes back to normal. Life that we have, everything, the magical life, the whimsical life that is this play, is going to be over, and we're all going to have to go back to sleep and stuff. Or no, by go back to sleep, he's saying it goes back to normal. We'll get into that as we go to, for the deeper reading and stuff. Because there's a lot there. But that's basically what's going on. It's not going to last. Gotta go back to normal. It's a very, very, very surface level reading of that. Alright, and for the sake of simplicity and for time, because we're already kind of getting towards the end of a normal lecture period, of some of the rest of the lines of the play very, very quickly, because they don't, not the play, but of this section, because they don't have a lot of bearing on the deeper meaning of it. Bear with my weakness, my old brain is troubled, all of that is simply him reassuring Ferdinand, look, I've said some kind of, trippy stuff, trippy shtick, don't worry, I'm just kind of old, kind of losing it, but everything's fine, You do look my son on a moving sword. Be cheerful, everything's gonna be okay. So that's basically what's going on as far as the surface level understanding of the play. Sorry, I'm juggling 12 things off screen at the moment. Alright, so hopefully it's still in frame, it should be. Alright, so that's the surface level. So we have the context, we have the surface level. Now let's dig down, let's grab a shovel and see what's going on with this. So this is our critical exam. I was gonna put that, just put critical reading. No need to be overly pretentious. I know we're in an English class, but let's cut down on that as much as possible. Alright, so what's going on in the first couple lines? So going back to it, in lines 1 and 2, which will again appear somewhere on the screen as you're watching this. When he says, you do look my son in a moving sort, as if you were dismayed, be cheerful, sir. So what's he saying there? He's telling this other person who is there, don't worry about it. He's telling Ferdinand everything's gonna be okay. But we may think about that as, while he's assuring Ferdinand, he's actually reassuring himself. Because remember, on the cusp of this, he just found out that he just remembered an attempt is going to be made on his life. And so if anyone has reason to, look in a moved sort, it's going to be Prospero. Prospero trying to console himself, telling himself everything is going to be fine. So we can already see that it's becoming a bit more introspective. And what I mean by that, if you don't know what introspective means, it just means that he's not actually talking to Ferdinand here. This whole speech is not actually addressed to anyone other than maybe Prospero. It's him more or less talking to himself, or what's called an aside. Alright, but if you don't know what an aside is, it's essentially when someone in a play or a film or something breaks the fourth wall and talks directly to the audience. If you ever saw Deadpool, that movie is basically one giant aside. And I never thought I would compare Deadpool to Shakespeare, but here we are. Because that's actually a really good example. An aside is a theatrical break in the fourth wall, where it's a character talking to the audience themselves, or they're talking just to themselves, and the audience is the intended listener. That's what an aside is. Alright, for that's line 1 and 2. So we already get the idea that he's talking more to himself, or at least on some level. So what is lines 3, 4, and 5? So our revels now are ended. These our actors, as I foretold you, are all spirits and have melted into thin air. That's a terrible delivery of that, but you guys get the idea of what's going on. So what's happening in those 3 lines? When he says our revels now are ended, given that we know he's talking more to himself, what seems to be going on here? Consider, this whole thing is being overshadowed by, an assassination attempt. Someone's gonna try and, well, knock him off, is what's gonna happen, or is about to, is gonna be trying to. So he's it's fair to think that he's got death on the mind, that he's not exactly the most peaceful of souls right now. So when he says our revels now are ended, one interpretation you could look at that is when he says, something is about to end, could be talking about his own life. So when he says our revels now are ended, it might be, my revels maybe ended. Sorry if you can't read that. I'm trying to write very small. Maybe I should just get another pen or something along those lines. We'll look into that. But that's what that first part is, because there's death hanging over all of this, which tends to make one consider what one wants to do with one's life. And he's talking about, but we haven't reached, full Hamlet soliloquizing levels yet. We're on level 1 of introspection. Ferdinand and the other people are still in the room. He's still talking to them. So this is still talking about the play. And so are the actors and all the spirits and that have melted into thin air. All of that still applies to everything else too. Except for one thing. You have this repetition towards the end that's have melted into air, into thin air. And any time somebody repeats something or seems to talk about something a lot in an older play or an older work like this, it's a form of emphasis. So when he's saying into air, into thin air, I don't think it's too much of a stretch of imagination to think that he might be considering, air, you evaporate, and if you guessed where I'm going with this was death, then you would be correct. It's actually a very, very morbid scene here. So that's what he's talking about, is all of these actors and things have disappeared into thin air, and he can't help but think that, maybe my life's about to disappear into thin air, maybe a little bit. And then jumping into the next section, for lines 6, 7, 8, and 9, this section begins to be a little more detailed about that. So that list that I just mentioned that we talked about in the last section, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, solemn temples, and all that jazz, that's talking about all the stuff that he might be missing out once he dies. So for lines 6 and 7, it's all the, the beauty of life he's getting at. Beauty. That's what he's talking about, the beauty of life that he's going to miss out. All those places of grandeur, because they're all places. He's talking about towers and palaces and temples, grand, magnificent structures, things that you would hope would persevere and last a long time. They don't. They dissolve. They disappear. Even the great globe itself. And if you weren't aware, the theater that was home to Shakespeare while he was alive is called the Globe Theater. So it's not too far of a stretch to think that this might be, good old Bill Shakespeare himself telling us, even the place right now, even you, the audience, where we are sitting currently, might probably disappear at some point. And it didn't. This fire of 1616, I believe. Most of London burned down, including the Globe. Actually, I think part of it, no, burned down before that. It was during a production of Henry VIII. They were using a real cannon, and a spark from it caught the thatch roof on fire. And then the Globe burned down. So he wasn't too terribly far off. But that's one of the things he's reaching out from the play. It's no longer just about this, about Prospero inside of the play. He's talking about things external to it, potentially, considering that this is the name of the theater where this is taking place, and this is an aside, and he's talking to the audience already, that where they are right now may not exist in a little while. Alright, so that's everything going on with that part right there. So what's going on in the next section? So this is going to come down here as well. When he's mentioning all the stuff is going to dissolve, it's going to end. So what's the next section about? We have 10, 11, 12, and 13. So what's going on in this section? So essentially when he's calling out the insubstantial pageant faded in line 10, that pageant is a play. It's superficial. It's not going to last. It's insubstantial and it's faded. Again, playing into everything we talked about, you could see that as a metaphor for life, potentially. And that sounds incredibly corny when I say it out loud, but think about it. Well, maybe you don't want to think about it because it's very existentially demanding. But if he's thinking about all these things about his life possibly dying, and crossing out into the real world and saying, like, you know, you, the audience, where we're sitting right now, that might even disappear here in a moment. And this very play, we're all in the play of sorts. All the world's a stage. That's gonna wink out at some point as well, and leave not a thing behind, not a rack. And what's left of it is only us in this short time span, that we are such stuff as dreams are made on. So what is a dream? A dream is a very, flitting thing. We have it one time and then it's gone. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's loosely connected to anything else. The logic seems weird. It's a fanciful thing. It's a whimsical thing. And he's saying that's the stuff that we're made on. That everything else that's going on, that's all gonna disappear. That's, as we exist, we are like dreams. That we are such stuff as dreams are made on. And what does he round that thought off with? Is that if we're all dreams, everything else is gonna, wake up from all of this. Wake up from us. The world is going to move on. That if we are dreams, life is gonna wake up. And if that sounds really kind of existentially terrifying, it is. Because this is meditation on him about to die at this moment. Very heavy-handed, and perhaps, I promise we'll get a little more lighthearted as things goes on. But this is one of those things that, even with so short a few section of lines, there's a lot of things to unpack here. There's a lot of things that are going on, that are layered on top of each other, that are complementing and conflicting and complicating other things that are happening in these short couple lines. All right, now for the next part of it, we're gonna cut to a performance and see how this is actually played out, because we can go over all of this, but if you don't see somebody doing it, it's hard to believe that anyone could actually say this, much less all of this could actually mean. What does this look like in performance? Because if you're an audience, you're not going to sit down and think about all this. This line is delivered in like a minute, maybe minute and a half, tops. Doesn't take very long. So how do you get all of this meaning into that from a performance? Well, let's take a look, see if we can find it in there.
That foul conspiracy of the beast Caliban and his confederates against my life! The minute of their plot is almost come! Well done! Avoid no more!
This is strange. Your father's in some passion that works him strongly.
Never till this day saw I him touched with anger so distempered.
You do look, my son, in a mood it sort as if you were dismayed. Be cheerful, sir. Our revels now are ended. These, our actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are melted into air. Into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant, faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. Sir, I am vexed. My old brain is troubled, bear with my weakness. Be not disturbed with my infirmity. If you be pleased, retire into my cell and there repose. A turn or two I'll walk to still my beating mind.
All right, we're back from that, and hopefully you guys can see a little of what's going on when he's giving that performance. It's Roger Allam. He's a very talented British actor. He's been in a couple other Shakespeare plays that I thoroughly enjoy, but I'm not going to make you guys watch him because I think this will be enough Shakespeare for a while. But you guys hopefully can see that when it's actually somebody up on stage, you can give a lot more detail and nuance to it, that it takes on another life of its own. It's a lot more intelligible, at least, hopefully, when someone is actually up there saying the lines and acting in character. But that being enough aside, because this lecture has already run far long enough already. Can't English today. Just a couple brief announcements and then we'll sign off for everything. And that's it at the end of the week, because there's trying to mitigate the number of papers that you guys have to write. You guys will have one of two options, and hopefully these assignments will be up by either this lecture when it's done or by Thursday. Because these are going to be due. Let's just put them on Saturday just to cut down the number of stuff you guys have to do for it. You're going to have one of two options. One is there will be a discussion post on well, everything that we read for a given week. So for this one, it's going, well, we're not going to put that. There's going to be I need to get a new marker. It's going to be a discussion post. All right, I want you to do two things. I want you to name, so of any of the things that we read, or any things that are in the lectures, or any of the material that we covered, I want to hear about a little bit, what's something you learned? And what's something that you either liked or didn't like from either of those two things? So for each one of these, figure out, for those discussion posts, you're going to put, I don't know, I'm actually not going to give a word length in this because I need to still juggle how much we actually want to do with that. But you have to have this in one of the posts, and then to reply to someone who either has no comments or has very few comments. The goal is to try to have everybody have some interaction with this. That even if your post was, 11:30, okay, maybe if it's not 11:30 Saturday night, that's not fair. But that everybody gets some interaction on the post, that you guys see all the other ideas that are out there, what everybody either liked or didn't like, and I want you to just compare and contrast it with what you did. If it's the same thing, so... But keep your eye open for this, because the lecture quizzes and the word of the days account for most of the points of this unit that were 10 points each. They are worth 10 points each. There are 9 of each. That's 180 points. So that adds up after a while. So please, please, please be doing them, because if you don't, not only will you be counted absent from those classes, but there's a sizable portion of Unit 4's grade. And amongst everything, if you're having troubles, technical difficulties, and anyway, that's all for today. I think we've gone nearly long enough, and I will talk to you guys on Friday, where hopefully I will try to make the lecture a little bit briefer. But until then, I will see you guys later.